style, sell with Sue. It's your move.
Welcome, everyone. Let's have tea for two today. Hey, tea for two with Sue. I was just enjoying some tea with my daughter on the weekend. It was her birthday. And it's just so nice and warm and cozy to get together and both of us just to have tea and share our hearts. And so I was just thinking of that today as I started this episode. Pull up a chair, grab a beverage, and let's just talk, the two of us, because I've got three things every buyer needs to know. If you can see that buying is in your future, then you need to listen into this episode. Or if you know anyone who's thinking about it, send them this episode to listen to. I've got some good things to say. And hey, there's no cost to you, it's on the house, as the episodes always are. Okay, so let's say we're sitting down and we're going to talk and you're thinking of buying a house. First thing I'm going to tell you is let's get you set up on a search right away. If you're thinking you're going to buy a house soon, you want to you want to start looking at least 6 months back. I would say, in my opinion, even more than that would be fine, but at least 6 months back, because you've got a lot of research to do that you don't know, or maybe you don't know that you have to get doing. When buyers come to me and they say, this is what we're looking for, if they haven't really walked much of that out yet, it's surprising how much things can change. And you really need to go through the process. So, first, just by setting up on a custom search, you're going to get properties that meet your criteria instead of wasting all your time on realtor.ca being lured in by beautiful, shiny homes that do not match what you're really looking for. You might fall in love right away. Oh, this house is perfect. It's perfect. And then you realize, oh, it doesn't have a garage yet, or it doesn't have enough bedrooms, or it's in a terrible location that you don't want. So, first of all, get on a search and start looking at what's available in your price range. You're going to vet out what is in your head, what you think you want, and then as we start going into houses and you start walking through these homes that meet your criteria, then your heart is really going to make it clear what your true priorities are. Because it's one thing to look at pictures online, totally different thing to walk in the house. And people say this to me every day when I'm showing houses. Even this morning, gentleman was walking into a house. The pictures looked great. The house looked even better once he got in and felt the space and saw, oh, the beautiful flooring with his own two eyes. So you want to give yourself enough time so that you're not rushed, so that you can do your own diligence and make sure what you think you want is really what you want, because your priorities reveal themselves as you are going through this process. Things like location. I just finished with some buyers and they thought they wanted to buy a house close to the river and walking distance to the river. Well, they end up buying a house and on exactly the opposite end of the city, but with some wonderful walking paths and in a very mature neighborhood that they loved. You might realize about schools, of course, if you have children, your priorities are going to have a lot to do with their schooling and their after school events. Square feet can be another thing. You might think you want 1,200 square feet at least, but as you're going through the rooms and seeing where you might store things, or, do you need a guest room for when friends or family come over? All of these things you walk out as you're looking in the houses and imagining yourself there. And then sometimes buyers, you don't think about looking at newer neighborhoods, especially if the buildings were built before 2021, I'll say. um, some newer neighborhoods can offer really good value, because as the trees mature, as the amenities get built, you're increasing the value of your homes. So, in a nutshell, I would say have me set you up on a custom search at least 6 months before and just start looking and see how that feels. But I actually have three tips. That was just an introduction. And let's get into the top three things I want you to know as you start going along that process to buy a house. So, number one, You're only confined by the walls you build for yourself and the mortgage amount you are approved for. So keep that in mind. If you do not have cash for the full purchase price of your house, then you're going to be getting some financing. Who are you going to get that from? Well, if mom and dad aren't giving it to you, you're going to the bank or you're going to a mortgage broker. And isn't it funny, ironic, I would say? I don't know why the banks do this, but often the bank you've been loyal to for the past 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, they are probably not going to give you a better rate than a mortgage broker can get you. Many mortgage brokers used to work at banks and realized they were limited by the products they could offer, so they become a mortgage broker. Yes, they're still limited with their range of products, but they have so many more options. And the last two times we bought homes was a very big difference between what the mortgage broker could get us for a percentage, our interest rate percent, versus our bank. So now it's a little bit different when you go to renew your mortgage. I have found often the banks give you a better rate than going back through the mortgage broker. But on the front end, when you're buying, keep that in mind. And what's important when you're starting to look out, again, 6 months out, is getting your credit as good as possible. You want to make sure it's over 700, you have a good credit rating, and there are things you can do for that. Pay off, get your bills, pay them off, pay things on time. And then that history builds up. And you also don't want to have any more than 30% sitting on credit cards or in your debt profile. So if you have a credit card and the limit is 10,000, make sure you don't have more than 3 sitting on that. In fact, pay it off ideally. But you want to really assess your finances and pay your debts off and position yourself to get the best interest rate and terms for your mortgage. Now, while we're speaking about money, you also need to have a deposit ready to put down on a house if you happen to see. Sometimes people do love the first home that they see. Their mind priorities match up with what their heart wants, and boom, they see something and it's just the perfect home. Well, you need to have some cash in the bank so that you can put a deposit with the house. And usually, whatever price your house is, you will include a deposit amount that is between 2 and 10% of that. The more, the better. It shows that you're more serious and you're not going to walk away. If you only put $5,000 as a deposit on a $700,000 or $800,000 home, the seller might feel like you're not that serious, because what's $5,000 if you decide to walk away? So the more is the better. And on these last buyers I just worked with, now they weren't first time home buyers, but they hadn't bought a home for many, many years. And so in that case, if you're not doing this every year, buying a home, you might forget some of the things that go along with it, because you are also going to need your down payment, which is the cash you're going to put towards the home. And that is different than the deposit. So sometimes people try to put down at least 20% so they can save on the CMHC financing charges. And so if you're putting down 20%, that's cash. Out of that, you'll also submit your deposit, which goes with the initial offer that we write on the house. But that initial deposit is part of your total down payment. So just take a minute to think about that and make sure that you understand it. I will also just note, stay within your means when you are looking at homes. During any boom, we have multiple offers. And when you are in a multiple offer situation, you might want to offer 20, 30, 40, $50,000 over the price, depending. But if you are taking financing, remember, an appraiser needs to appraise out the value of your home. And so they're only going to lend on the hard facts of what that value of the home is. Now, if it's worth more to you and these other multiple offers, that's fine, but you need the cash to make up that difference. And we have seen over these last 3 or 4 years, more deals fall apart than I have ever seen in over 20 years sitting in this industry, because people are offering more because of multiple offers, and then the lender is not financing on more because the house isn't worth that much compared on recent solds. So stay within your means and don't risk being denied financing. Okay, number 2, time is a critical factor. Time is of the essence, always in real estate. We try and get houses listed as soon as possible. If you're interested in a house, we try and write on it as soon as possible. You don't want to lose it. But you could lose a deal just from being 1 minute late. First of all, when you're writing an offer, there is a time that that offer is open until. So if it's open until 10 o'clock tonight, and you're going back and forth and things don't come together before 10, you either need to amend it and extend the time it's open to, or the deal has fallen apart. You're not in a live deal anymore. And if the sellers want to get out of that, or you as the buyers, if someone has a change of mind and the time has gone past, even if you've agreed verbally, it needs to be on paper in a timely fashion. And the other time that is very important is when your deposits are due. You might have an initial deposit. You might also have an additional deposit. And that's all outlined on the contract as to when those things are due. And really, if they're due by 6 p.m. on such and such date, you need to have that submitted before 6 p.m. to make sure that you're not going to lose this deal. You never know what's going on behind the scenes. So, I mean, you could say this on seller and buyer sides. If something comes up and the party wants to get out of it, they can use a loophole like you didn't do something in a timely fashion, even waiving the conditions, which I think most people are well aware they need to be waived on time. But if you're late, if the email doesn't go through, if the form isn't signed in time, that does open a very precarious door that you might lose that deal. So take time very seriously. And number 3, if you want the best deal in real estate, please do not do this. And I'm going to talk about it because I just saw it again this morning. Buyers, you're so savvy now because we're on technology more than ever, and then there's also big AI companies like Zillow and Honest Door that really don't have your best interest at heart, but have their algorithms playing, having fun with all of us. And sometimes their information is right and sometimes it is not right, but everyone is online and you're doing your own research, and so you might feel very savvy, and you might feel like you don't really need to call a realtor, your own realtor, every time you want to see a house. A house comes up and you'll just call that listing. And you also might think you're going to get a better deal if you go and see a listing and the listing realtor becomes your realtor as well. Let me tell you, you are not. First of all, if you're buying a house, you don't pay the commission. The commission portion comes out of the selling side. So, number 1, it is not costing you, for the most part, anything extra in normal circumstances to vet out some sales professionals who you want to work with, who seem like they have good experience, who will tell you the truth about the houses that you're looking at, and who will advocate for you. It does not cost you any more to choose a good realtor to have on your side than to just randomly use the realtor who's listing that house, who does not have your best interest on side. Because if you use the listing realtor, they are not solely 100% for you. They become a transaction manager. So they're just managing the negotiations of the deal. And you've got to have your own back. And I know there's a saying, caveat emptor, buyer beware. Yes, you do need to beware, but you just put yourself at risk of having a brand new agent who maybe doesn't know a lot about the business as well as know anything about you. So it doesn't cost you any more to work with the best and with someone who has your interest. If you want to get the best deal, You will work with someone, so they'll be on your side. You will tell them all about your wishes and your needs and your concerns, and they will let you into every home. So they are seeing everything you are looking at, and they are able, if something's coming up, to give you a little bit of insight, maybe to bring things to mind that you didn't notice because you're so in the moment, and also be ready to offer when you see something that you want. Be in a headspace that I'm prepared to make an offer, have your deposit prepared in your bank account, and be ready to move and take action when you do see a house that you do want to put an offer on. And when it's time to put in that offer, make sure that your agent understands about negotiation techniques. One time many years ago, I studied hostage negotiation tactics. It was an excellent course. And one of the main things that I still use out of that is that presenting a bully kind of offer or trying to be a bully in a deal is actually not the best way to get what you want. No, in fact, coming alongside, listening to the other parties, being mindful of what the other side is looking for can really go a long way to getting your way in a deal. Case in point, a house we're taking possession of in a couple of weeks. Oh, it was a battle going back and forth with this seller. She obviously had very strong emotional ties. We were in multiple offers, and my clients were not able to go to the full purchase price, let alone over that. But we valued the home and we put our best foot forward. Along with that, what I encourage them to do is to just write a note, because they're a young family starting out, they want to have children and they want this kind of a family home. And my buyer, oh, she just knew in her heart that this house was for her. So very respectfully, we just submitted the meaning behind the purchase for the seller. So the seller did end up accepting our offer, which I believe, well, it certainly wasn't at full listing price, but I do believe it might not have even been as good as one of the other offers. But because there was a story behind that we shared, our offer got chosen. And now that we're coming up to closing, the seller, who was very challenging to deal with during the negotiations, which went on for quite a long time, she just sent a lovely letter to the buyers and sharing her heart of why she loved the home and why it meant so much to her, telling us about some fruit trees in the backyard and some different little things, and tips about the home. And so in this case, this friendly negotiation really went a long way for my buyers, who are hopefully going to enjoy that home for a long time, just like the seller did. And can I give you some bonus advice? Because I think that was three tips already, but bonus advice, I just want to let you know, when you are going through and looking at a home, you're looking at that home, I'll say, through rose-colored glasses, if you've heard the term before. You are looking through your own emotions, what you want, how the home makes you feel, which is the right thing to do. You need to do that. But me, as your realtor, I'm looking at your home through the real estate lens. So I'm taking things into consideration, like if something comes up in your life and you need to sell this home quickly, can I sell it for you quickly? Or is it so unique or in such a weird area, it's going to be hard to do a resell? And I'm going to let you know that. We're going to have a home inspector come in and check. Is the mechanical all safe? Is the structure good? Because if the home's a dud, I'm going to tell you the findings so that you can make an informed choice based on your heart, but also on the intellectual knowledge that we're gathering as we're looking through this home. I heard a story from a guy I saw on a webinar, and he was talking about buying with his emotions. And one of his earliest investments was a small building that he bought. And he says now that he looks back, he can see he was just so emotional about it. He wanted this building. Maybe he wanted his first investment property. And so even though the numbers kept getting higher and higher and they weren't as good as he first seemed, he was emotionally invested in buying that building. And so what he should have done was just cut the cord, at a certain point, just say, no, those numbers are not going to work for me. But he let his love for the building get in the way and he bought it. But now, he admits, I'm going to have to keep this for 15, 20 years. Who knows until the next boom to take us through to make money on it. So he didn't exactly use his wisdom. And maybe a realtor he was a realtor. So if he had been working with a realtor, that's something maybe that we would have said, hey, just to let you know, your numbers aren't working out anymore. Are you too emotionally involved? Do you want to take a step back? Maybe think about this, sleep on it overnight. And of course, you could choose to do whatever you want to do, but having all of the knowledge, this is key. Well, thank you for listening to me today. If you know someone who's ready to make a move or looking to buy a new home in Calgary or the surrounding towns, will you reach out to me? Connect with me and I'll take it from there, because remember, it's your move. You're the one who's in charge of it. And I hope to see you next time. Thank you for listening in today. I'm going to talk a little bit about sellers and give a few tips for if you're selling a home in my next episode. So I hope to see you there. Bye for now.